Hey folks, and welcome to another episode of Crit Hit Reviews, with your host, Arlyeon. On today's episode, I'll be talking about Goblinz Studio's Dungeon Rushers. Find out if I had a blast delving into this dungeon crawling RPG, or if I couldn't rush through it fast enough. Dungeon Rushers chronicles the heroic tale of a fledgling rogue, as they set out to, basically just run around from dungeon to dungeon, lifting everything they can to stick their money-grubbing fingers on. In the process, they come across a motley crew of quirky companions who accompany them as become embroiled in a dark and twisted conspiracy meant to turn the dungeon business into a bleak and dismal exercise in capitalism. Which is to say that you really shouldn't take the story seriously, but since it leans so heavily on the fourth wall, you probably shouldn't need me to say that. The bits that do crop up as you progress through the game do tell an overarching narrative, but a lot of it comes off as a series of punchlines. And I do mean it when I say the characters are quirky insofar as they seem like vehicles for certain running gags, which started to lose their charm as the game progressed. Especially given that the moments where the plot actually advances feels fairly sparse, leaving a lot of the game's dialogue just feeling like filler. Gameplay-wise, Dungeon Rushers is sort of close to what it says on the tin, as it does see you crawling through a variety of ruins, engaging in RPG-esque combat. That said, I wouldn't really use the term rush in any context of the word, as it's a ponderous experience from start to finish. For one thing, whilst a lot of the game will see you exploring preset dungeons in search of loot, and to advance the story, there's actually no real reason to hurry along. In fact, blindly ambling forward will often just see you winding face first into fights, traps, or random events. If anything, there's a far more deliberate and strategic component there, given that you do get the ability to defuse traps, manipulate fights, and better navigate the dungeon through your companion's skills while you roam the map. Well, once you get those companions, it admittedly took me a fair bit of time to get a full team of 5, and even then, each new recruit required a fairly intensive bit of farming to both get them up to speed with the other characters, as well as to provide them any form of gear so they weren't at risk of being slain in 1 or 2 hits by everything in the dungeon. Let's actually touch on battles for a moment here, because whilst it certainly has the bones of RPG combat, it also doesn't lend any truth to the game's moniker, because it's incredibly slow and you're unable to speed up or skip animations. Given that you're left fighting groups of enemies that are equal or larger than yours, who can summon in reinforcements on a whim at times, this can lead to some rather drawn-out turns, made especially worse if someone on your side gets knocked out, since there's no way to revive a companion while you're inside the dungeon. Death by attrition, when done well, can certainly add a lot of tension and a sense of risk and reward, but the experience in Dungeon Rushers feels like it misses the mark. I will say that the addition of the bonus objectives you complete over the course of the levels, which generally make things a lot harder, were at least an interesting detail, not only because it gave you a reason to revisit earlier stages and grind, but because of the heroic mode, read harder, variants of the levels are chock full of loot, since it resets the end of level treasure chests and therefore provides a viable source of resources. What's entirely weird, however, is that the game does have some multi-area dungeons that you can challenge, which are randomly generated, and therefore prevent you from simply memorizing the obstacles and steamrolling them. That said, unlike heroic dungeons, they can only provide an end-of-level treasure once, which more or less ensures that you'll stick to challenging the preset levels. Yay! Admittedly, clearing all of these chunks of side content does help justify the process of farming materials and experience because, like I said, you level pretty slowly. Enough so that it's an agonizing process to creep forward through the skill trees for the various characters to find out what works best. Still, at least I didn't have any issues with the crafting system. It's not the most complicated element to be sure, and it definitely leans fairly heavily on you farming up parts excessively, but it provides a far more stable way of kitting out your characters than relying on the shop and its randomly generated assortment of wares or what you find in the dungeon. Also, quick aside, there's apparently a whole element of building your own dungeon and both challenging others and having yours challenged, but I didn't really get to see anyone online or delve into it, so I don't have much to comment on that. Of the various segments of music I listened to, there wasn't much that stuck out to me either, because it was either grating or just not memorable. A lot of the experience was just meh. The graphics in Dungeon Rushers are alright, though there are moments where the sprites look a little bit off. But anyways, we're getting down to the nitty gritty. And let's boil down something here. So a large portion of why I run my channel is because I'm broke as heck, and I know plenty of people that are broke as heck and love games. So I rate these things from the standpoint of, would I recommend this game to a friend or acquaintance? It's where the whole scoring system comes from. Hits and above are things I will recommend to anyone, though the intensity may vary. Fumbles tend to be pretty niche and for the people really into a genre or series. And then there's the fails, and this is such a quintessential example of one, because I cannot think of anyone I would recommend this game to. Were hindsight 2020, I wouldn't have bought it, but here we are. Mistakes were made. Dungeon Rushers is just tedium incarnated. It's a slow and balanced and often unfair title which is more than happy to slowly drag you through its story. It tries to be funny, but a lot of its comedic and narrative beats fall short. If you're looking for a fun time, look elsewhere, because I failed to have one while suffering through this title. Anywho, thanks for tuning in. If you agree, disagree, or just have something to say to me, feel free to comment. And for those interested in more indie reviews, developer interviews, podcasts, or Monday TTRPG content, hit the subscribe button and the bell so you know when there's a new release. There's also a Discord. You can click a link in the banner or the description to become a part of our community, the Crit Hit Cauldron. Lastly, if you'd like to help support the channel, we do have a coffee running now to help supplement funds for lovely editor Jack, and to make sure we can continue to provide quality content. Again, check the description and the banner for them links. I'll catch you folks on the next episode of Crit Hit. Take care till then, folks.